Grab your heartbeat, share us round. Now tap that screen, tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap
Welcome
it,
Grumps to Wordle with Gaga.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Welcome Darky to Wordle with Gaga.
Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart.
Welcome
claim
Gaga
your
and
points
Grumps to
prepare
Wordle with Gaga.
Tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Gang gremlins coming, let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Gang gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Grumps says it Darky high.
Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcome in guys, settle down. Grab your heartbeat, share us round. Now tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, it's your warm
Grumps says it's Sam Hale.
Gang gremlins on the scene. 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 Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah.
Gaga
Welcome
Grumps
Isaac to
says
Wordle with
welcome
Gaga.
gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to
Tap
play.
that screen. Yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Gang gremlins on the scene. Now tap that
Gaga
screen.
Grumps says hey guys, how goes it?
Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen.
Grumps says it Isaac high.
Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the rose Isaac. Isaac says NP.
Welcome Jack to Wordle with Gaga.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says now who is ready to play Wordle.
Isaac says me.
Jack 070715 says me.
I guessed it wrong, guessed it right.
Gaga
Now
Grumps
here we
says
are,
oh Grumps with the level up.
another height. If support was letters, seriously you'd spell wow. This level's ours, come out with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came
Gaga
in,
Grumps says number 30 in the room.
level unlocked, shout out check. New fandom level, streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me
Grumps says it Jack
find. Tomorrow we guess
070715
same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Isaac says you, let's go.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. F.
Welcome J Light to Wordle with Gaga.
70715 says funny.
Gaga Grumps says Isaac on the nose. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon,
Gel High says flower.
like-a-thon, fingers on fire, like-a-thon,
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
like-a-thon, gremlins define.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
JACKO70715 says freak.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with F, please, Isaac.
Isaac says fraud.
Gaga Grumps says fraud you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow R in need of a home.
Isaac says prick.
Isaac says NVM.
Gaga Grumps says by the pricking of my thumbs your will shall not be done.
Welcome Merjetta Zekiri to Wordle with Gaga.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says chore fits. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Merjetta.
JACKO70715 says skill.
Welcome Rafaela Whiteheart Wing to Wordle with Gaga.
Isaac says score.
Isaac says in VM.
Gaga Grumps says R lives at number 4 Wordle Street. O needs a home. Gaga Grumps says hi Rafaela.
JACKO70715 says
Welcome
skill
Carly
for
to Wordle
filling.
with Gaga.
Isaac says Lori.
Carly says often.
Grumps says it. Carly, welcome back.
Gaga Grumps says we don't do fillers without reason, stuck or trap filter.
Grumps says at Rafaela Whiteheart Wing Hayer.
Gaga Grumps says sorry Fitz. Gaga Grumps says no change.
Isaac says ovary.
Isaac says NBM
Thanks
no
for the
E.
follow.
Gaga Grumps says and is spelt with an A of which there isn't either. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Rafaela.
Carly says hydro.
Carly says intro.
Carly says intro.
Gaga Grumps says no C for micro.
Carly says I said intro.
Gaga Grumps says yes but someone said micro. Gaga Grumps says intro fits.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons!
Carly says yes, J did IT.
Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers
Welcome MIA to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG's for Carly.
Carly says thanks.
Gaga Grumps says Doobadoo Gaga. Share the live chat the chat and shower her with roses and GG's. Gaga Grumps says hey Isaac, the first filmed some of next week's Wordles earlier and I got AP and used your suggested words, so look out for it next week.
Carly says I think the wheel will choose T.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says yep. It just takes me some time lol. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Isaac says it Gaga and Grumps or.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. K. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon, gremlin rin.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire, like-a-thon, hearts beat flying, like-a-thon, gremlins defy.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says hey there Chris, how you doing today?
Welcome Chris Marvin to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with K please Grumps.
Grumps says Korea. Welcome H to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says let's see if it accepts that. Grumps says meh.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle says no.
Welcome Sassy Princess Brooke to Wordle with Gaga.
H says craft.
Carly says cocky.
Carly says cocky.
Grumps says catch.
Carly says Grumps to cocky.
Gaga Grumps says catch you got.
It's a word to wipe out. No letters to shout.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Welcome PH to Wordle with Gaga.
PH7 says BG.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Grumps says huzzah.
Carly says found.
Carly says found.
Isaac says prawn. Welcome Sarum to Wordle with Gaga.
Carly says foundry.
Carly says found.
Isaac says prawn.
Carly says found.
Carly says found.
Isaac says prawn.
Sarim says job.
Carly says found.
PH7 says bijou.
Carly says found.
Grumps says at sassy-princess-brook welcome back. Grumps says at PH7 heya.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart PH7.
Carly says found.
Gaga Grumps says found fits.
Welcome Tracy to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says at Sarum hi there.
Carly says he found does.
Gaga Grumps says at Chris Marvin thasts why I suggested it lol.
Grumps says loads of folks snuck in without me noticing. Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome Gaga and Grumps to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Welcome Isaac to Wordle with Gaga.
PH7 says bijou.
Grumps says huzzah. Welcome Rafaela Whiteheart Wing to
Carly
Wordle
says
with Gaga.
found.
Carly says found.
Carly
Welcome
says
PH to
foundry.
Wordle with Gaga.
Carly says found. Carly says found.
Welcome Grumps to Wordle with
Carly
Gaga.
says found.
Sarim says job.
Carly says found.
Welcome Carly to Wordle with Gaga.
PH7 says bijou.
Carly says found.
Grumps says at sassy-princess-brook welcome back. Grumps says at PH7 heya.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart PH7. Gaga Grumps says rapid works.
TH7 says vapid.
PH7 says vapido.
Gaga Grumps says we end in APID great word choice.
Isaac says vapid.
Welcome to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Tickfinity is having an aneurysm. Gaga Grumps says CSN we not repeat suggestions please.
Welcome Chris Marvin to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I mean your own. You don't need to spam the chat. Gaga Grumps says vapid must be it.
Welcome DARCIE to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Sharon to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Will the fireworks fly? A random star chosen by fate. Play a part.
Gaga Grumps says hopefully Tickfinity is all caught up now.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we do the daily Wordle. I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results. Gaga Grumps says this isn't today's Wordle.
It's do or die, only in 3. A pretty sky. A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga.
Welcome Shay to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I pre-record all the dailies and schedule them on my page. I don't play them here. Gaga Grumps says this is one from the archives. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says this is one from 2024. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, D. Gaga Grumps says PH7 on the nose. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thumb, race to the top. Like a thumb, tap and don't stop. Like a thumb, who will be crowned?
Welcome Weather to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grumps says at Weather welcome back.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with D please Isaac.
Isaac says tried.
Welcome Jesper Gotet to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says hi there Jesper. Gaga Grumps says dried you got. Gaga Grumps says yellow E in need of a home.
Isaac says shape.
PH7 says value.
Gaga Grumps says you smashed the first like goal. Awesome tapping. Gaga Grumps says shape fits. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless A.
PH7 says begat.
Gaga Grumps says begat works.
PH7 says gleam.
Gaga Grumps says alive's at number 4. E and G are homeless.
Isaac says clean.
Gaga Grumps says gleam is a good shout. Gaga Grumps says needs AG Isaac.
Welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Welcome Gremlins.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins.
Welcome
Let's
guys.
see those W's in the chat.
Settle down.
Good game.
Grab your heartbeat. Share us round. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Game Gremlins on the scene. Game Gremlins on the scene. Game Gremlins on
Gaga
the
Grumps
scene.
says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Game Gremlins, come and let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it. Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next one.
Now tap that screen. Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says, what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Isaac says Grumps on the nose.
Shay says quote.
Gaga Grumps says he's only gone and done it. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with a Q. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Grumps says it Chris Marvin too late.
Gaga Grumps says
welcome H to Wordle with Gaga.
Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Q, please, Shay.
Shay says quote.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Gaga Grumps says quote you got.
Isaac says thanks Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says E lives at number 5, you in need of a home.
Isaac says fluke. Shay says bloom.
Gaga Grumps says fluke fits.
Welcome Hayato to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says you lives at number 3.
Welcome Trusted Trader to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says prune works. Gaga Grumps says you know what time it is.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says fireworks for Chris.
It's a performance night. Explode 'em on her face. She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga.
Welcome Molly to Wordle with Gaga.
Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga grumps says, "Yay Molly, how did it go?" Gaga grumps says, "If you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid." Gaga grumps
Welcome
says,
MIA
"Awesome."
to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says, "What letter will the wheel choose?" Predictions in the chat now. Gaga grumps says, "We are starting with A. G."
Welcome MMACSM to
Isaac
Wordle
says
with Gaga.
Molly on the nose.
Gaga grumps says, "Leaderboard reset incoming." Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word. Gaga grumps says, "Well done Molly."
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned like
Gaga grumps says, "Want to steal the starting word? Send the ranking crown and snipe the list." Gaga grumps says, "I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance." Gaga grumps says, "Where my rave loots go." Gaga grumps says, "Your word starting with G please Isaac." Gaga grumps says, "Now they work."
Isaac says grump.
Gaga grumps says, "I didn't need to ask, did I?" Gaga grumps says, "Grump you got."
Isaac says law.
Gaga grumps says, "R lives at number 2 Wordle Street."
Shay says bread.
Welcome Oscar to Wordle with Gaga.
Isaac says drive.
Oscar says brace.
Gaga Grumps says bread fits. Gaga Grumps says a yellow A in need of a home.
Isaac says arson.
Oscar says frail.
Gaga Grumps says arson works.
Shay says crazy.
Gaga Grumps says hi there Oscar, how goes it? Gaga Grumps says are still homeless. Gaga Grumps says crazy still works.
Isaac says crack.
Gaga Grumps says we start with CRA.
Shay says CK.
Welcome Piran to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says okay filter needed.
Shay says crack crawl craft.
Thanks for the follow.
Shay says flack.
Carly says it's craft.
Gaga Grumps says if we use FLAC it will test for all of them. Gaga Grumps says how do you know Carly?
Shay says craft.
Carly says cause I'm telling you.
Shay says at Carly W.
Carly says, see, I told you it was craft.
Gaga Grumps says not good enough. I need facts, not feelings.
Carly says ugh, shut up.
She says LOL.
Carly says I knew it.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle is a game of logic. You play logic or loser.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Will the fireworks fly? A random star
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Ra-da-da. Wordle with
Grumps says behave or the dog.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and we'd love you to share your results.
Get it in 3. It's do or die. Only in 3. A pretty sky. A Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following me.
A Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next
If you
one.
would join us.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Welcome Jennifer Baker to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grumps says at Libs welcome back. Isaac says Chris on the nose.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. M. Gaga Grumps says Chris is the psychic one now. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top, like-a-thon, tap and don't stop, like-a-thon, who will be crowned, like-a-thon, gremlin renowned, like-a-thon, fingers on fire, like-a-thon, gremlins don't tire, like-a-thon, hearts be flying, like-a-thon, gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with M please Isaac.
Isaac says music.
Gaga Grumps says music you got.
It's a Wordle wipeout. No letters to shout.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Lost in the grid, can't figure it out.
Shay says great.
Oh no! Wipe out!
Isaac says grave.
Gaga Grumps says we love a wipeout Shay.
Welcome Oakley to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says, or was that the suggestion lol?
Welcome
She
Charlie E
says
to
both.
Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Green R lives at number 2 Wordle Street. Gaga Grumps says oh the only vowel. Gaga Grumps says brown fits. Gaga Grumps says row in the middle.
Shay says growl.
Shay says NVM no G.
Shay says prowl it is.
Welcome today's Wordle,
Gaga
tomorrow to
Grumps
Wordle with
says prowl
Gaga.
is in the grid. Gaga Grumps says all green grid. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go! Team Gaga, 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 Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here?
Gaga Grumps says doobadoo for Gaga. Share the live chat for chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins,
Gaga
let's
Grumps
go!
says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. V. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Fingers on fire like a thorn. Gremlins don't tire like a thorn. Hearts beat flying like a thorn. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with V, please, Chris. Gaga Grumps says valet you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow are in need of a new home.
Isaac says prawn.
Gaga Grumps says prawn fits. Gaga Grumps says I'm going to have seafood boil on Friday. Lovely prawns, lol. Gaga Grumps says Alives at number 3R needs a home.
Isaac says scary.
Gaga Grumps says scary works.
Welcome Crystal to Wordle with Gaga.
Crystal says good morning.
Grumps says it Crystal top of the day to you.
Gaga Grumps says hi there Crystal, how's you today? Gaga Grumps says diary is a good shout.
Crystal says I am good, how's you doing today?
Welcome, Gremlin, to the Game Grotto. Welcome, Gremlin.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Settle down, grab your heartbeat, share us round. Now tap
Gaga
the
Grumps
screen,
says
tap
welcome
it,
Gremlins
tap
to the
that
Game
screen,
Grotto.
tap it,
Take a
it's
seat,
your
grab your daily
routine.
heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Game Gremlins on the scene. Game Gremlins.
Gaga Grumps says I'm good tart.
Crystal says, grumps you to my friend.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Game gremlins come and let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Game gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily hunt. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Crystal. Gaga Grumps says I can't type your name without typoing Crystal. My brain always wants to swap the Y and S lol. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Welcome, hello, it's Abigail to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. U. Gaga Grumps says hi Abigail, nice to see you. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Thanks for the follow!
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with U please Isaac.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Isaac says open.
Gaga Grumps says thank you for following Jesper. Gaga grumps, says Urban you got.
It's a Wordle wipeout. No letters to shout.
Gaga grumps, says wipeouts in the chat.
Crystal says, at Gaga and Grumps, I get that a lot, and a lot forget the H.
Oh no.
Carly says hi. Isaac says light.
Kylie says him back better than ever.
Gaga grumps, says sleep fits.
Carly says Sloan.
Gaga grumps, says we are starting with SLE needs a home.
Isaac says slap.
Carly says slime.
Carly says slime.
Carly says slime.
Carly says slime.
Crystal says slope.
Carly says slime.
Carly says slime.
Gaga grumps, says slime fits. Isaac says don't spam in chat please. Gaga grumps, says don't spam your word please.
Kylie says in not spamming.
Welcome Saint to Wordle with Gaga.
Says slice.
Isaac says slice.
Carly says slide.
Carly says slime.
Carly says slide.
Carly says slide.
Gaga grumps, says okay, what are our options?
Carly says I am not.
Gaga grumps, says third strike she's gone.
Isaac says slice and slide, I think. Welcome Hummy to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Emily Hart Hands to Wordle with Gaga.
Isaac says we're good to options 3 guesses.
Welcome JX Dion's MG to
Jexton
Wordle
Sum
with
12
Gaga.
says, can you do the coins for me to do daily heart me?
Gaga grumps, says yep, 2 choices 3 guesses were God. Gaga grumps, says is there not one up JX? Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says slice it is.
Grumps says it Charlie welcome back.
Gaga Grumps says Grumps pulling a Carly in my ear, told you it's slice.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says nope, him terrible at 50-50.
It's playtime!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons! Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga,
Gaga Grumps says doodle-doo for Gaga. Share the live chat for chat and shower her with roses and GGs. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart sync. Gaga Grumps says story of my life lol.
Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Crystal says keep the suspense going, I love it.
Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
It's a LLL.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Isaac says treasure box is open. Gaga Grumps says level up button next to let's play button lol. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. You again.
Grumps says odd looking, why that?
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word. Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says sometimes you wouldn't know there are 25 letters on the wheel. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with U please Crystal.
Crystal says unite.
Gaga Grumps says what is USTIN? Gaga Grumps says unite you got.
Crystal says Unitex.
Grumps says at Chris Marvin it's sometimes hiccuping, but always catches up in time.
Gaga Grumps says yellow N and E in need of homes.
Isaac says clean.
Gaga Grumps says what are you sorry for Jesper? Gaga Grumps says clean fits. Gaga Grumps says no change except eliminations. Gaga Grumps says E can got on end. Gaga Grumps says Mena. Is that a thing?
Crystal says nerdy.
Gaga Grumps says peony.
Welcome eggs and bacon to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome Cody YY to Wordle with Gaga.
Isaac says ebony.
Gaga Grumps says well that sorted it out. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart eggs.
Crystal says ebony.
Gaga Grumps says hi Cody. Gaga Grumps says ebony it must be. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Ra-ra-ra. Will the fireworks fly? A random star chosen by fate. Play a part.
Gaga Grumps says thank you for the kisses, Crystal.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Ra-ra-ra. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Only in three, a pretty sky. A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga. Da da da. A Wordle with Gaga. Ra ra.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. N. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top. Like a thon, tap and don't stop. Like a thon, who will be
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
fingers on fire. Like a thon, gremlins don't tire. Like a thon, hearts be flying. Like a thon, gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word
Welcome
starting with N,
Esoothbark to
please,
Wordle with
Grumps.
Gaga. Grumps says noted.
Gaga Grumps says hi South Park, how goes it? Gaga Grumps says noted, you got.
Isaac says spear.
Gaga Grumps says a yellow E in need of a home.
Grumps says at S0 Oothpark, hey there.
Exon Backen says cream.
Gaga Grumps says spear fits. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless A to our E. Gaga Grumps says and it's no an or Edward.
Isaac says please.
Gaga Grumps says could be in each word. Gaga Grumps says not today, I don't think. Gaga Grumps says Blaze works.
Welcome Sky to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says E moved into number 5.
Isaac says leave.
Isaac says NVM.
Gaga Grumps says hi Sky, how goes it?
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says yes, it's going to ambush us. Isaac says laps. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Sky. Half works. Isaac says value. Gaga Grumps says well, that sorted it out too. Gaga Grumps says value it must be.
Isaac says it could also be Valve.
Isaac says NVM.
Gaga Grumps says thank you for the dancing hearts, Crystal. Isaac says EA value it must be.
Welcome, Gremlins, to the Game Grotto. Welcome, Gremlins, to the Game Grotto. Welcome in, guys. Settle down.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Crystal says I have to go now, but I will be back tomorrow with more coins.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the Game Grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Game Gremlins, come and let's go.
Grumps says with Crystal, have a great day.
Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Let's
Gaga Grumps says thank you so much, Crystal.
Game Gremlins on the scene.
Crystal says little low today on coins, but wanted to send you something.
Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says no apologies for gifting in here. Everything to keep the live moving is appreciated. Backquote. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says he hasn't even predicted it.
Grumps says oh my.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with a Q. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon. Who will be
Gaga Grumps says wrong button.
Gremlin renowned like a thon. Fingers on fire
Gaga grumps says the wheel's spoiling him with another cue sent me delulu. Gaga grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Gaga grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga grumps says your word starting with Q please Chris. Gaga grumps says quiet you got. Gaga grumps says yellow E in need of a home.
Isaac says leave.
Gaga grumps says do I have to? Lol.
Isaac says lol.
Gaga grumps says leave fits and checks the E for 2 spots. Gaga grumps says E lives at number 2 Wordle Street. L and A need homes. Gaga grumps says relay is a good shout. Gaga grumps says A moved into number 4. L still homeless.
Welcome Larissa Joy to Wordle with Gaga.
Larissa Joy says penal.
Larissa Joy says metal.
Gaga Grumps says one try it pedal cause it tests metal and penal so acts as a semi-filter at the same time. Gaga Grumps says and it's none of them lol.
Larissa Joy says decal.
Gaga Grumps says decal for Wordle in 5.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons!
Isaac says, have we had a firework today?
Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps,
Gaga Grumps says yes one.
Grumps says that Isaac just won so far.
Gaga Grumps says DVD for Gaga. Share the like, chat the chat and shower her with roses and GGs. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says who's having pancakes tonight. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Isaac says I'm having pancakes today.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. E. Gaga Grumps says what are you having on them?
Grumps says at Isaac so do we, and of course today I long for savory.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Isaac says igloo.
Isaac says probably sir.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says at Gavin and Javi welcome back.
Gaga grumps says your word starting with E please Chris. Gaga grumps says hey there Gabby. Gaga grumps says earth you got.
Isaac says Heath.
Oscar says heels.
Isaac says NVM no T.
Gaga grumps says yellow air and H in need of homes.
Oscar says NVM, that's a plural.
Gaga grumps says and doesn't end in H. Gaga grumps says indeed Oscar.
Isaac says cheat.
Gaga grumps says cheat fits.
Welcome Charlie to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says H lives at number 2E and is still homeless.
Isaac says shade.
Gaga grumps says hi there Charlie. No P for phase. Gaga grumps says shade works. Gaga grumps says we have a trap. Filter needs. Gaga grumps says filter needed. Word using as many of those letters as possible. Isaac says Val.
Welcome Tilly to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says hi Benzie, it's a
Welcome
trap,
Isla
we
to
need
Wordle with
eliminations.
Gaga.
Gaga grumps says hi Tilly.
Isaac says, yeah, I think Milky is best filler.
Gaga grumps says Milky is brilliant. Gaga grumps says thanks Isla.
Isaac says shave, it must be.
Gaga Grumps says shave is in the grid. Gaga Grumps says so it was. Scrolled off my screen, sorry Chris.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons! Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly!
Gaga Grumps says let me set up the last game of the day. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Isaac says
Welcome
Z,
Jamie
okay.
to Wordle with Gaga. Welcome MMKH
Gaga
to Wordle
Grumps
with
says we are
Gaga.
starting with A. N.
Mum says nylon.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn. Fingers on fire like a thorn. Gremlins don't tire like a thorn. Hearts
BLO Son VXC HIA.
Gaga Grumps says hi Jamie and MMKH, welcome to the last game mode.
Welcome BLSSOM.VXZ to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says just made it blossom.
Well, Sam VXC says, are you ending after this?
Gaga Grumps says frayed so blossom. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with N please Isaac.
Isaac says nerve.
Usam VXZ says sad face.
Gaga Grumps says nerve you got. Gaga Grumps says I have a plate of pancakes awaiting me.
It's a Wordle wipeout. No letters to shout.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Lost in wonder, you can figure it out.
Isaac says ending of with a wipeout law.
Isaac says unless we get fireworks.
Usam VX says moist.
Mum says shout Wordle wipeout.
Welcome Carrie to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says moist fits. Gaga grumps says hi Carrie.
Mum says musty.
Gaga grumps says we start with MS&T need homes.
Blossom VXD says
Welcome
musty.
Jay to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says musty for fireworks.
BL0SSOMVXZ says that Carrie don't need a filler.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's a performance night. Explode 'em on her face. She's in
Gaga grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks.
Welcome Muslin to Wordle with Gaga.
From Gaga's face.
Isaac says hello.
Isaac says ending off with both whiteout and fireworks.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single roast.
Grump says fireworks to go out with.
Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga grumps says wipeout increase the chance of fireworks. Perfect ending. Gaga grumps says thanks for joining me to play Wordle. I will be back at 4 PM UK tomorrow for more Wordle with Gaga.
Grump says good night everyone.
Gaga grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.